Okay, I think council really does understand the zoning, the change that you're requesting. I think we've all got our heads wrapped around that. I think our planning department has been very clear on what they're saying to us. And I think you're hearing up here that council is still very much in support of this, as am I. It's just that one of our departments, one of our key departments, is raising a red flag saying, be careful. And I don't know if Ruth, if I can draw you into this right at the moment or not, but if council passes this tonight and ignores the red flag raised by our engineering department, and we go ahead and Carmen's moves in and does 90% of their business, 95% of their business in catering, and 5% of my wife or me going there to get our dinners, and a kid crosses the street and gets whacked by a vehicle where there's no markings, what's going to happen?
Well, I think as council's aware, in the case where there's ever an accident on a municipal road or municipal right-of-way, we're generally named in litigation. And I think you were very clear in your joint and several liability statement earlier that the municipality can potentially be responsible for 100% of any damages award at the end of the day, if found even 1% liable.
Right.
So that's what joint and several liability means. So if there was somebody found 99%, however, that person was had no money to pay a judgment, then the municipality would be responsible for 100% of those damages. So that might be something that can be seen as being not necessarily something that would happen, but it could happen. That's the risk. And of course, any decision that a council has made previously in respect of a location or a situation that might be reasonably foreseeable can be used in a litigation situation. So that's just something for council to be aware of, as it's always a possibility depending upon, the circumstances.
So on the other side of the coin, going along with what Deputy Mayor McDonald said, we have done our due diligence. We've put up 2 different crosswalks, even though we all know people will cross wherever the heck they want. If that accident were to occur, and I know it's hypothetical, but if it were, and even if we put a crosswalk there and the accident occurs, we're still on the hook.
If there's 1% liability,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
If there's 0%, then no.
yeah. Okay, Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you. You got extra land across the street we were talking about, can a catering truck just go park over there and start selling if he rents the land off a neighbor?
You're planning it.
Like,
Through you, your worship, Councillor Jacobs, are you talking about
A food truck.
A food
like
truck?
a hot dog truck, a taco truck, whatever. We got them sitting on every corner here now. I mean, if he went across the street, could he get a spot to sell?
Are you referring to on this property or on a different piece of property?
Well, there's property across the street that's vacant, directly across the road. I think that Leamington Collision owns whoever owns that, and they're talking about possible development. Could they rent that out to me and I have a taco truck? Can I move in there?
My understanding is that no, they would not be able to, but I think maybe Ruth would be better to answer that because they do have to get permission from her department.
Ms. Orton?
That's actually something in our business licensing bylaw that we're looking at. Our mobile vendor bylaw does not speak to where they can be located. We look at them on a case-by-case basis. So we're actually looking at that specific question right now as to where they should be located and if they should be located in only certain areas that are zoned a certain way. And this kind of discussion has actually triggered and broadened that discussion.
if I may, your worship, then in response to that, Ruth, it's a commercial venture, those commercial properties, so technically until something changes, theoretically, they could move in there, apply for a zoning or application and move in? We have
Well,
nothing to prevent it currently.
If you're talking about our mobile vendor application, well, we'd look at it through the application process, and we determine if it's an appropriate location or if it's not an appropriate location, looking at traffic patterns in the area and whether there's appropriate space for parking and those sorts of things. In a in a commercially zoned area, it would be more appropriate because those are the kinds of businesses that are already operating there.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I know this is the weeds, but joint and several liability. So we had an accident where a child got hit by a car mid-block. Is that the kind of thing that, are we also liable then? And further to that, a couple other instances where we are now clearing off the dock, Leamington dock, with anticipating the fact that we'll have drawing people down there for our fireworks night. We will have snow fence or some kind of fencing to say don't jump off. But if somebody gets hurt or jumps off or falls off, let's say falls off, are we not liable? Even the fact that we draw people down to our parks and down to our marina, are we not liable every time that the people come onto our technically municipal property? Is that not, are we not open to that pretty much 24/7, 300 and however many days, 65 days of the year? Is that not the case?
Yes, the municipality has risks everywhere and everything we do. And that's why we just have to, as council's very, very aware and administration's aware, all of our decisions have to be made with that in mind, at least from my perspective. That's always how I'm thinking. But every decision that council makes, there is an element of risk probably associated with it. So you just have to balance that risk with the benefits.
Have anything to add? Yes. Mr. Neufeld?
Just on that, and I'm trying to be cognizant of the time, but there's a difference to when you invite people to a municipal property. So the liability, the expectation then is that things will be safe. So for example, in the wintertime, this is one of the reasons why we close our parks and our trails, to set the expectation that they aren't going to be cared for. The standard of care is different. We're not inviting you, the public, to come and use these resources when they are out of control, or out of repair, if you will. So it is a little bit different, except that in a planning situation like this, where the municipality is considering changing the zoning to allow a particular use, now we have to think, are we inviting the students to cross the road to utilize these services, even if it's only 5% or even if it's 3%. In the end, the courts are going to decide whether we're liable or not, and as Orton has reiterated several times, if we are at all liable, we can be held 100% liable financially.
So, to bring it all together, what are council's wishes? I think we're all realizing what exposure we're under here, and that our engineering department has raised a red flag for us to consider. We realize this business, we all want it to continue and grow. We want it to be located in Leamington. The building is there. Yes, you can. Need your microphone, though.
I have to read all that? Oh. I would make the motion that, which one is it here? That the current site-specific industrial light zoning Westby permit a catering establishment and use accessory approved by council. I guess whatever that is saying there. Amending bylaw 42-17.
Motion on the floor, supported by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Away we go. All right.
Tony's got something to say there.
Can I just say one thing, please? There's a fence going up there now, is there not? Could that fence not be moved to the other side of the sidewalk? I mean, it's maybe out there, I don't know. Instead of having the sidewalk on this side of the fence, put the fence on that side.
You mean on the school property?
Well, it
or
would now
where-
be on town property, I believe, instead.
No, but you're talking about the school
Yeah,
development.
yes, the side, that's right. I think the fence belongs to the school or to the
Yes.
town, I'm not sure.
Not
But
us.
if that could go on the other side.
Mr.
Just
Neufeld?
a suggestion.
I think this is what Mr. Botham was suggesting, that regardless of the situation, the decision here, we're going to need to look very closely at this situation, not just from the perspective of Carmen's catering, but all of the potential changes that may be coming in the future. So we'll take some of those things into consideration.
Okay.
Could
Fire
I
away.
ask your indulgence, or ask council to turn their minds to our time limits are set in our bylaw to go to 10 p.m. However, with the approval of council, it can be extended, I think, for at least an hour.
1 hour.
Unanimously for 1 hour. The reason I'm raising that now at 9:45 is if there is an anticipation that we will continue going for an hour past 10, that will determine which reports we go forward with now. If council is considering that the evening is going to end at 10 o'clock, then there are other reports that absolutely need to go now. So I'm looking to council to see whether they want to make the motion at this point to go longer and get through as much as we possibly can.
Councillor Verbeke.
Through the mayor, since we're going down to 2 meetings a month, I would like to sit here till this agenda is completed. I'll make the motion that we do that.
I think by our bylaw, we can only go for 1 hour. 1 hour, so if, for
Then
1
we're the
hour.
mayor, then you pick what needs to be done, as long as you get Elliott Street paved.
I'll
I
second the
agree with
motion.
that.
I'll second
Seconded
the
by
motion.
Councillor Jacobs.
Councilor Wilkinson needs to come back.
Okay.
Because it needs to be.
All right, has to be unanimous. All right, so we'll wait for. No.
In the last bylaw, when we went to 2 meetings, we changed it from 6 to 10. From 7 to 11.
I'll do it again. Yeah. No. It's our our bylaw, yeah.
Okay, now you can.
Here we go. So, Councillor Wilkinson, we have a motion on the floor to run past our typical 10 o'clock for 1 hour, and we're making it now at 9:45, so are we talking 1 hour past 10?
Yes.
Okay, so to 11 o'clock, basically, so we need unanimous support. If not, then we'll be finished at 10. So, motion's on the floor. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. So onwards we go. Can I just go in the list that we are?
Who's up? What do you got?
I've got asphalt tender results.
Yeah.
Mr. Botham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to recommend that council award the 2017 asphalt program contract to the Millam Paving Corporation in an amount just over $500,000. And within this contract, we would include the milling and paving of Lutch Street from Talbot to Mill, from Mill Street East from Erie to Victoria, and Elliott Street from Talbot to Wilkinson. We did tender for this work and did close tenders on June the 1st, and Millam Corporation was the low tenderer. I'd like to draw your attention to two things. One is that we've already completed some repairs to the existing combined sewer. You may have noticed some road closures over the last 2 weeks. We're also recommending that we repair a manhole that's it's in a state of disrepair and beyond any help we can give it And within the contract, we've included approximately $40,000 to make that manhole repair. But we would recommend that funding come from the infrastructure reserve account. You'll notice in the financial impact section that this project is heavily funded from some programs, the OSIF formula-based program and the federal gas tax. And again, the $40,000 for the manhole repair from the infrastructure reserve account. So we are recommending the council award a contract to the Millam Corporation.
Thank you very much, Alan, and I have to echo Councillor Verbicki's comment. I was thrilled to see Elliott Street mentioned in there, so I'm on that road an awful lot. So, Councillor Verbicki?
Really, Mayor, I don't have it in front of me now, but I was just kind of concerned, are you doing anything on Elliott Street within the next 5 years? Because I hate to come back.
In the way of sewers and sidewalks
Yeah,
and
because
curbs
I
and
know
gutters?
we get enough, I'm glad we're doing what we're doing on Fox and that, but we're going to get enough crap if this goes and we rip it up again. Is there any idea in the 5-year plan, I don't have it in the budget, if any improvements to the infrastructure there?
It will be closer to 10 years by the time we get there.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dunn, support by the Deputy Mayor. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And carried. Next, well, we have 3 reports coming up, Mr. Simons. So I'm just going to let you run through. And again, just, hit the high spots, because I know Council has read all of this stuff, but hit the key points for us to consider.
Okay, with my first report for the LKRC hot water boilers. Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. I'm here to recommend the award of the hot water boiler tender to Volmer in the amount of $59,836. We originally budgeted to only disconnect the existing and install the new unit. The removal cost was something that we were going to consider doing in the future, not with this project. However, we did include the line item in the tender. When we reviewed the submitted tenders, the pricing was favorable, so that's part of the overage, to which I'm recommending funding the additional $12,000 for this project through the reserves. And finally, recommending that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract. I was asked a question about how much we're actually saving. I can't put a tangible number to that. Your typical household unit is about 40,000 BTUs, a natural gas hot water boiler. We currently operate at 2.5 million BTU system in the Shirk side, as well as 1,000 gallons worth of holding capacity in the tank. That 2.5 million BTU boiler circulates that water all the time to keep the hot water supply there, so if somebody turns on a tap, they've got hot water. We did a similar project to this on the arena side, where we replaced an oversized unit. We've experienced savings in fuel consumptions over there, not totally because of just that, but a number of other items that we're doing on the arena side. This goes in conjunction with that. We go from 2.5 million BTUs to 1 million BTUs, 2 separate units, each 500,000. So those units aren't running all the time. We can run 1 unit if we don't have the demand, and it only runs when we need it. So it's a consolidated unit that has the holding tank and the boiler built in together, similar to what we did on the arena side. We did the tenders in May. I had a mandatory site meeting to which we had 7 contractors in attendance. When we closed on June 14th, we received 5 qualifying submissions as outlined in the report. We have approved funding in the amount of $50,000 for the hot water boiler project. Again, the over expenditure of $12,000 we're recommending going through the Kinsman Complex Reserve Fund, which is at a year-end balance of $652,000 projected, which does not include consideration to other reports that may have a similar request. Thank you very much.
Questions? Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by Councillor Hammond. Discussion on the motion. Just real quick, it's been a while since I've been down in that basement. Those are those great big massive things that are leaking all over the place? Okay, cool. No. Get them done. All right, all in favor of that motion? And carried.
Okay, report number 2, the evaporative condenser, which helps control our ice plant on the arena side. So again, good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm here to recommend the award of this project to Simcoe in the amount of $139,000
Yeah.
and 690. I'm also recommending that there is an over expenditure of $45,000, which I'm recommending come from the complex reserve. The existing system was installed with the building in 2000, and even though our facility condition assessment that was done in 2013 didn't target this until 2020, we have been experiencing some issues with it over the last few years. Around the time we did the condition assessment, our maintenance contractor prepared a capital equipment plan, of which it requested the replacement of that unit for 2015. They say that the typical life of that is about 15 years, which we're at 17, so the other part of the overage has to do part with, in preparing the budget, I projected that cost from that report and didn't anticipate the US dollar as well, so there is factors in there where I did underestimate the budget for this project, which is part of the reason of the overage. Similar to the other report, we posted the tenders in late May. We did have a mandatory site meeting. It's important to note that to specify this specific unit, the existing structural support for it is there. If we go with a different unit that's a different size, we would experience even more costs associated with structural upgrades to support a different unit potentially. At that site meeting we did have 5 contractors there. When the tender closed, we received 2 qualifying submissions as outlined in the report. And it goes to the point in the last time I brought a arena tender to you guys where we only had 1 submission. There are other players coming to these meetings, and we are getting out there, and our typical players are realizing that. So hopefully we start to get more favorable pricing moving forward as well. Again, we recommend that the $100,000 that was budgeted plus the over expenditure of $45,000 get passed and taken through the Kinsman Complex Reserve Fund. Also recommended that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract. Thank you very much.
Council's wishes, questions, sorry, Councillor Hammond?
Thank you, Your Worship. Terry, what is an evaporator condenser used for?
So the evaporative condenser is the unit at the top of the facility that supplies the glycol through the system for the ice, to make the ice.
Council's wishes. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, supported by Councillor Wilkinson. Discussion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Okay. And your final?
Finally, I won't say good evening again.
Well, good evening to you then. How's that?
And I'm here to recommend the sole source award of the pool solarium tender to Leamington Glass in the amount of $145,000. It's finally recommended that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract. The condition assessment identified this as a critical item right at the time of the assessment, something that's past due. The original windows in the viewing area of the pool. This kind of goes in conjunction with our ceiling painting project that we are doing. Once this project is completed, we've done the windows, the roof, the ceiling. Now my next focus is to start looking at the HVAC system, all the old pneumatic systems, and have probably going to get a consultant in this year to start looking at those systems and determining what we can do to make further upgrades now that our building is secure and sealed tight. The building envelope is ready to go and move forward. We did budget $180,000 for this, so $145,000 leaves room left over, which the exterior wall is deteriorating because of the moisture, We've removed the trees that kind of caused some of that, as well as all the moisture caused by the windows too, so, then we can start sprucing up the outside after that too, and kind of move forward with the plan that we have in place. We did have a site meeting. We reached out to local glass companies. Only one person attended the site meeting. It was Leamington Glass. When we closed the tender on June 14th, we did receive one submission from them. Through a technicality, they didn't register as a plan taker. So even though they submitted the tender on our website, they weren't registered as a plan taker, which deemed their tender insufficient. And then in saying that, because we received no other tenders and the pricing submitted by Leamington Glass falls within the budget, it is recommended to move forward with them as a sole source supplier. We do have, again, as I said, we do have the money in the budget for the project, and the balance will be spent on the exterior wall. So, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Jacobs, sorry.
Move the recommendation with the question.
Okay. Support the Deputy Mayor. Question, comment, question. Comment.
Yeah, well, my comment is that, Terry, I just want to say you've come to us recently with a lot of expensive items to look after. But I want to say that I want to congratulate you and your staff, because I think what's happening now is we're getting into the rhythm of having a real quality assurance program in place where we're looking at all this stuff in advance. And then I anticipate that in the near future, we will not be getting hit with these big ticket items all at once, like through a general process. And I think that the program that you do have in place currently is working. And, you know, I think we can start to see the effects of that already. I just want to say congratulations on that and hopefully keep up the good work. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The same goes for me, Terry, and to staff too, that we now have an attitude going forward that we don't believe in Band-Aids, that we actually look to perhaps go a little deeper with the surgical instruments and cut out the bad stuff. But I'm very happy to hear you talk about fixing the outside, because I'm telling you, that pig needs some lipstick. It's just, I'm talking gardens, I'm talking the landscaping, not the building itself, but really aesthetically, when you drive by somebody's house and they have an unkempt house, you think they're either sloppy or they don't care. And that's what we're starting to look like on the outside. It's just overgrown, that's all. So I'm glad to hear you recognize it and then you're going to do something about it. I'm not criticizing you, I'm just glad that you're recognizing it, and I think that's a really good attitude to have, as Councillor Jacobs said, for all of us. It looks good for everybody, so that was a compliment in there.
To that point, I am working with Public Works to have that remedied this year, or at least the plan for a lot of that remedied this year. I had pricing to take out those hedges, and it was a bit more than I expected, so I'm going to work with Public Works to try to get those hedges taken care of, and then I've got a meeting already scheduled this week with Corey to go over the gardens and see if we can get some regular maintenance done on them. That's not our staff, that's not, nothing against our staff, but they're not horticulture staff.
Council. So, good. Sure. Go ahead.
I realize that, it's just that it's under your umbrella, so that's all, thanks.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Your Worship. My question is regarding the Leamington Glass, and they didn't do something properly. Did they understand what mistake they made in filing in the proper tendering process, so that going forward that they won't make the same mistake on this question?
It wasn't really Leamington Glass, it was on our part that we had not really instructed them properly. So fortunately, there weren't any other legitimate quotes. This won't happen again. It's been taken care of.
We have a mover and a seconder already? Did we do that? Okay, cool. I was just going to say, good work. It's long overdue, so thank you very much for taking care of it. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Next report up is one regarding Hogs for Hospice event. And Janine, patiently waiting at the back of the room.
Well, good morning, Mayor and members of council. I know that was a bit cheeky because I'm certainly not the last one on the list tonight, so I feel bad for whoever's behind me. I'll make this very brief. The report before you has 5 recommendations. Basically, this is, again, a summary of what we're doing for Hogs for Hospice. This is a template that we built on last year based on the successes that we had and saw. So, of course, we're moving again with the same formality in how we're pulling this particular event together for this year. So this report basically involves council authorizing reduced lanes and closures of some streets in the festival area. It's the same footprint as last year, so there's no differences there, and the map was attached. That council authorized the entering into an agreement with the Erie Shores Hospital Foundation, and that should say Erie Shores Health Foundation, by the way, apologies, and the Hogs for Hospice for the use of Seacliff Park and Seacliff Drive and Shirk Street to Erie Street and all of the road closures that we have there. That we authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreements as required for a special events permit, and that we grant an exemption from the noise bylaw during the weekend as we did last year, and the event be granted significant event status for the purposes of attaining AGCO licensing agreements with our vendors who are providing beverages for the weekend. I don't think we need to go into too much detail here on the event. The event has an expanded footprint this year. Even though it's still a 3-day event, we are offering 2 concerts, one on Friday night and one on Saturday night. So the expansion, that's why we have the expansion of the requirements for AGCO, because we will have licensed areas for both nights of the concert, as well as a licensed area during the day this year inside of Seacliff Park, which will be managed by the Kinsman, which we are excited to see. You'll see the number of partners that we have here outlined in the report is similar to last year, in fact, slightly expanded a bit because of the expansion of the programming. Of course, we need new partners to come to the table, and we will be following through with all the due diligence that we did last year, including volunteer training. We will be doing a neighborhood campaign again to inform neighbors of what's coming, which was well received last year. We will be having neighborhood resident passes for those folks that live in the area where the streets are closed. We have had our public safety meetings ongoing with the OPP, Fire Department, AGCO, Public Works were requested, as well as EMS, to ensure that we haven't overlooked anything and that they are included in our plan. Other than that, we have all the required documents before us from all the partners that are participating, including the requirements for the $5 million of liability for all the partners that are participating, and that has been managed through our insurance provider, along with the Erie Shores Health Foundation provider, which happens to be the same provider. So that's all we really have. The financial impact, of course, is 0 because Hogs for Hospice did receive a municipal grant this year, and so they are funneling their costs through that, as well as the expanded funding that they've received from Celebrate Ontario and a few other sources. So that's all I have for you this evening, or this morning.
This morning, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Verbicki.
Through the mayor, I just want to know, is everything on schedule?
Yes, sir.
It could be windy tomorrow again. There could be protesters tomorrow again. Like, is there a cutoff date, Pete? No, I'm just curious. Okay, thank you.
Just so you're aware, in anticipation of that, the Hogs for Hospice Committee have been working with our engineering department through Mr. Rob Sharon, and we did have a contingency plan in the event that the amphitheater was not finished in time for our event. And so those provisions have been made and taken care of.
Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. So tongue in cheek, I was going to ask, we're expecting to have a roof on the new amphitheater, but Larry already stole my thunder. Janine, we're all looking forward to this thing happening again this year, and we pray for good weather and everything to work out well.
We're super excited too.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
to all your committee.
Moved by Councillor Verbicki, supported by Councillor Dunn. Discussion on the motion. Anybody opposed? No. I mean, all in favor? And carried.
We'll see you there.
Thank you. Good morning. Next report is one regarding the year-end variance analysis, and I have Ms. Roach. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Before I introduce the 26 variance report, though, I do want to recognize Ginny and her team This team works tirelessly to make sure that the financials are complete, accurate, and that all required deadlines are achieved, including the audit, which we went through very quickly tonight. And Ginny mentioned the annual FIR filing that was done in advance of the deadline, which had been moved up a month earlier this year. So, let alone all the everyday financial support that they give the corporation. So I would like to express my thanks to Ginny and her team for all of the work on the 2016 financials. Thanks, Ginny. So for 2016 ended with a taxation-funded surplus on a cash basis of $2.3 million. Provided in the report are 3 schedules for council to consider. Schedule 1 includes the draft recommended transfers to reserves based on year-end results. Senior administration is recommending these transfers with consideration given to the numerous upcoming projects and council's strategic direction to continue the investment at our waterfront and Leamington's uptown. The capital intensity of council's priorities have also been considered. The contribution to the contingency reserve is to allow for rate stabilization and to provide for one-time funding requirements as the future needs arise. When transferring these surplus funds to reserves, the funds are not restricted. Transfers from reserves to fund various initiatives is upon council's resolution. So therefore, the balances within the reserves can be transferred in the future should council decide. Schedule 2 of the report provides detailed explanations for the net surplus and deficit by each department. And Schedule 3 lists the transfers to reserves completed in 2016 that have been based on the 2017 approved capital budget and the fact that these projects were not completed within the year. These transfers to reserves do not form part of the net surplus. So the $2.3 million surplus is an increase of about $1 million over the 2015 surplus. So there are a number of variances within the individual budget line items across the 35 municipal departments that are outlined in detail, as I mentioned in Schedule 2. However, there are 4 main areas that I will highlight for you that contribute to the surplus. So about 65% of it, or $1.5 million, is the investment income. The second area is supplemental tax revenues, and this is the